Welcome to the More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or as we like to call it, real debate without the hate. I'm Greg Matuzak, a liberal Democrat and veteran of many political campaigns from Cincinnati, Ohio.
I'm DJ McGuire, an economics instructor, a cost estimator, and a conservative Democrat from Suffolk, Virginia.
I'm Molly Malloy Cooper, a economics instructor and a free market conservative from Columbus, Ohio.
I'm Rebecca Kushmiter. I'm not an economics instructor of any kind. I'm a freelance writer and a liberal Democrat in Kensington, Maryland.
The More Perfect Union can be found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Facebook, and at our website, moreperfectunionpodcast.com, where you can also find host bios and commentary and some fascinating posts by some of our fabulous commentaries. I think I said that. Yeah. So it's been quite a week. It's that's the understatement of the day, isn't it?
Oh my God, what a week.
Yeah.
I need my scorecard. Who's in, who's out.
Yes. Yes.
It's been one of the more entertaining weeks, really.
Yes, and
I feel like, the rhetoric has taken a turn.
Yes, that's the the way you put these things, it's as if you could be a communications director. You have such a way with words.
I could be a communications director. I actually, if I were applying for a job as a communications director, the first thing I would put on my resume is, I know when to tell a reporter that I'm off the record. Which would make me actually more highly qualified than the current White House communications director, who called a reporter and basically opened the floodgates of every criticism he'd ever had about his current coworkers without going off the record. And the reporter hit record.
Right. And as we know, the current thing, if you've ever had worked with any reporters, if you say, hey, this is off the record, the reporters aren't supposed to, but how are we? I know we call him the Mooch around here, and I'm pretty sure that's how his family. I
think he calls himself the Mooch.
I think he does. I think it's on it's on the back of all of his suits. It just says the Mooch. Yeah. But it was. So what were some of the most egregious things that he said in this?
When he announced that he is not Steve Bannon, he's not trying to suck his own, insert euphemism here.
Right.
That was my favorite line of the whole thing. In fact, I wanted to introduce myself that way on the podcast. I'm not Steve Bannon. I'm not trying to suck
Molly, did you have any favorite bon mots from the Mooch?
No, Rebecca stole mine.
Sorry. I redistribute it, Molly.
DJ?
Actually, answering this question is a bit like a mosquito in a nudist colony. I don't know where to begin. Given that everyone else has thrown in has chosen Mr. Scaramucci's insistence that he is not from Nantucket, I would probably have to go with probably his full flame out on Reince Priebus.
That's my favorite,
which actually did what he wanted it to do, in that it got Priebus out of the way by the end of the week. So I'd have to go with that one.
Yeah, that's my favorite, and because Reince, repeat? I can't remember. Reince was fired by the end of the week, and after Mooch referred to him as a psychopath. No, it was paranoid. That was a
paranoid schizophrenic.
Paranoid schizophrenic.
Yeah.
And what I love about it was supposedly there were two aides to Reince in a van. They were headed out to the runway of a jet or something, and they all heard the news on a tweet or somewhere, and the two aides looked at him, and then got out of the van quickly to leave him because they didn't want to be seen with Reince. So they left him alone in a van to drive back because he wasn't getting on the plane. That's how he supposedly found out that he was getting fired. So,
and the one of the idiotic things about this is Mooch talks about he says, "Oh, I'm never going to trust a reporter again," and giving the impression that this was all supposed to be off the record. He spent half the interview bashing leakers, accusing Priebus of leaking, and now his whole thing is, "No, I didn't want to go on the record. I meant to leak all of it." Are you kidding me?
Well, I mean, the really egregious thing, if we're going to get down to some meat on this, and not just the delicious frosting that Mr. Mooch brings with him everywhere he goes, apparently.
Rebecca, I have to be inappropriate because I'm too drunk not to be. The sausage jokes are writing themselves right now.
I'm telling you. But yes, if we're going to get into serious topics, the reason Le Mooch was calling Ryan Lizza was to get the name of a source, which Lizza was under no obligation to reveal, and in fact, as a reporter, had a duty not to reveal. And Scaramucci, scary dude, Mooch, just kept hammering on him and pushing for the name of a White House source, that's bad form. That's like the privacy of sources is something that's been upheld by case law. And the fact that Scaramucci, A, is too dumb to go off the record, and B, is willing to push on getting sources revealed when it's not a national security question. The guy's unqualified. He's got no ethics, and he's a schmuck.
Molly, as our
what was that on the record, Rebecca? Or
yes, I am on the record as saying that I think the Mooch is a schmuck.
So, Molly, as our conservative, and do you have one nice thing to say about her? Because I feel like we're kind of negative on the Mooch today. Can you think? Besides, I know he was hired. Literally, he was hired because he looked good on TV, and Trump liked the cut of his jib. Do you feel like seriously? That's why, because he looked, and he's like that guy. Can you? Help him out, throw him a lifeline?
I really can't. Not yet, anyway. There's not a single other administration I can think of, both, at the federal or state or even, local, mayor's office, where, you have one guy going and saying all this stuff one day, and then the one that he was talking about is the one that gets let go 2 days later, and not the one that mouthed off to the reporter. So, to some extent, maybe it's all part of the shtick and the whole throwing weight around and getting things done. And so, but. No, I would say it's an inauspicious beginning, I guess.
All right.
And we'll see where we go from there.
As a fellow Italian, because I'm half Italian, I'm going to help him out. Because,
all right.
Because I have a theory. And, us Italians, we stick together. I have a theory that he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. And we talk about this every week. Right. And DJ's going to say that's exactly what I was going to say. And I want my haircut and beard to look just like Greg's, because that's going to be the next thing.
I won't go that far.
It's coming. It's coming. But he is supposed to be, and we talk about this every week, he's the distraction. Because he is the distraction when things are bad, and things are bad, and when they're pulling all sorts of fast ones, he is going to go out there and go, hey, let me tell you something inappropriate about someone over here, and this guy, hey, what about this? And he's doing all sorts of hand-waving, and let me show you about my ties, or let me show you about how great my suits are, and this broad over here. He is great, but he's not the president, but he talks just like him, and he can say even worse things. And everyone's like, oh, let's talk about the Mooch. Awesome. And in fact, we've spent the first, 8 minutes? 10 minutes of our show. And we haven't even talked about the healthcare debacle. We haven't talked about the Transamerica. We haven't talked about sanctions, because we're talking about how bad of a job the communications... Perfect distraction.
So I've been hearing the transgender was the distraction from healthcare, and so Mooch is the distraction from the transgender?
Yes! Yes.
Yeah.
Again, I need a scorecard.
Yeah, I know.
And all of it's distraction
He's
from
a
Russia.
magician. He's the magician's assistant. He's like, hey, look at this shiny set of keys. He's the pretty girl while the magician like saws the woman in half. He's that guy. You know?
But he's also the guy who'll stand behind Trump and look over his shoulder as he's ticking away at his BlackBerry in the wee hours and say, "Oh yeah, dude, that's awesome. Tweet that.
Oh
Tweet
yeah.
that."
He's
Yeah.
the
You know,
process.
he's telling Trump what he wants to hear. And a friend of mine was saying, he's like, Scaramucci is what Trump thinks he looks like. Like when Trump looks in the mirror, that's what he sees. It's some sort of Dorian Gray thing or single white female where, Trump doesn't believe he's like an aging, overweight 70-year-old man. He thinks he's, this really suave looking guy in the prime of his life. And that's, maybe another reason he got hired.
Do you think?
Wait, I'm sorry. Did you say that Trump thinks he's Christian Grey? Is that what I heard? Or is that not what I
No,
heard?
I said portrait of Dorian Gray.
Oh, sorry.
I referenced literature.
I was
Got
gonna
my
say,
grays confused.
You guys have two different reading lists, which I would love to discuss.
Yeah, but
That'd be a
hers-
fun conversation.
No, hers is
I
stuff
read
she
50
reads.
Shades
Hers,
of Grey, and it was crap. It was
Yeah,
worse than the Mooch.
no, her Rebecca's list is stuff she reads. My list is stuff that that my wife reads so that she can complain about it. That's literally the only reason she read 50 Shades of Grey was that she could complain about how horrible it was.
No, and your wife's a writer too, so she
She is, exactly.
Right.
So she want to know exactly how she should beat the hell out of it.
Good.
with a lighter.
So, so we got rid of Reince. I'm going to get that right one of these days, and maybe then he'll start returning my calls.
No, we got rid of both. Greg, we
sign a non-disclosure agreement, so he might be the one to write the tell-all.
Oh,
I think
never know.
Spicy's all locked up and can't do it, but maybe Reince can.
right. So
But
Reince,
we actually got
Hell out of
rid. Yeah,
that.
we got rid of Rince and Reince this week because
Right.
we got Reince Priebus is gone,
right.
and Obamacare rinse and repeat, supposedly repeal and replace, was also bounced in the United States Senate
Sure.
because essentially. Because John McCain decided that when he said he wanted the Senate to go to regular order, he actually meant it, and he saved his make it regular order vote for Friday morning at 2 a.m. as I was bleary-eyed staring at my TV. And it's the Trump's reaction. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but Trump is essentially threatening to pull congressional members' health care. He's threatening to pull for the risk corridors. He's basically throwing what I call a Trumper tantrum. And in that he didn't get what he wants, and now he's just lashing out at anything he can reach. First question I think we should ask ourselves is, one, where does healthcare go from here?
Well, before we do that, I have a question before that. I know we're going to get deep in the weeds with healthcare. How am I supposed to feel about McCain? Because the beginning of the week I was angry at him, and then now I'm supposed to feel. And then in the middle, first he voted for this procedure of voting for, and then he turns around and said, I'm against this. He does a whole speech saying we should do a more partisan and go back to the way it was. And then he spends the end of the week voting against what he was supposedly for or against. I am so confused.
What his vote was a vote of no confidence in Paul Ryan. He did not trust Paul Ryan not to bring it immediately to the floor in the House and send it to the president's desk. And I don't blame him. I don't trust Paul Ryan either. Paul Ryan wants this to go away. He has to go raise a lot of money to keep his majority.
And it really says something about the 49 aye votes in that they essentially were willing at the end of the day after the McConnell plan, the BCRA fell apart, and after the actual repeal, but not repeal today, repeal it in 2 years, that fell apart. You end up with 49 Republican senators who essentially said, yes, we will vote for this skinny repeal or mandate repeal. We will vote for this only if we are certain it has no chance of getting enacted whatsoever. You gotta be kidding me, people.
Yeah,
if you don't want something to become law, vote against it. That's the easy way to do things. Don't vote for it and hope to God that it goes to a conference committee. Just vote against it.
Well, that's what McCain did. He didn't trust Paul Ryan.
Well, I think, this is certainly not unprecedented with all the defunding votes. It was the same thing versus, when they actually have someone that could sign it. And I do think there is something to McCain, who has nothing to lose at this point. Skinny repeal was not very popular, but possibly even more unpopular is not repealing it when they said for 8 years that they were going to repeal it. So I think his no vote gave cover to some of the more moderates, in addition to Collins and Murkowski. But
no, I think that's exactly right. I think he was giving cover to Flake. I think he was probably giving cover to Heller.
Portman.
Maybe even Portman.
Oh, don't get me started on Portman.
And I also think he hates Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And doesn't mind sticking it to him.
Yeah,
but how much cover? I mean, if you think about this, we are, to some extent, we are now in a very new era on this politically, in that, I still call it the patently deficient and unaffordably careless act because I think it was very severely flawed. It is, however, more popular than it has ever been in its history. And the fact of the matter is, I think we are entering an era where voting to preserve Obamacare is more popular than voting to repeal it. Promise or no promise or anything in between. So yes, Portman and Heller and Flake can all say, I kept my word to the voters. But I think particularly where, next year when Flake and Heller go before the voters are going to say a lot of voters are going to say to themselves, maybe that wasn't really a good promise to hold in the first place. And perhaps we should, it's not just a matter of making a promise you can't keep, but it's an issue of making a promise that maybe you didn't really think through. And I wonder if voters in 2000, particularly in those two states, are going to say, something, yeah, you made a promise and you kept the promise, but you also promised us that you had a good replacement plan for the patently deficient, unaffordably careless act, and you have shown in 2017 that frankly was a lie. The Republicans didn't have a replacement.
This is where regular order comes in to save the day. I think McCain actually has a pretty good political sense here. If they go to committee and start drafting what would essentially be a reauth, where they fix everything that's wrong with Affordable Care Act and dole out the idea of progress in sound bites over the course of the next 6 months to a year, it looks like progress without actually having to do anything. And, they can say they're working on this and, this has come through and the committee just passed this and it just looks so much better than this sneaky way that McConnell was trying to get it done quickly. Sunshine was not good for this process. By going back to regular order and making it slow and deliberative, they can talk a really good game about what they're going to do without actually having to do it and risk changes being less popular than they think.
Well, what I think they need to do, and I think it's something that needs to be done again, is they need to remind, because there are a large chunk of the American populace has health insurance that is worse today than it was in 2009. And their voices have been completely drowned out by everything else that's going on. Understandably, I mean, as an economist, Molly, this was concentrated benefits and diffuse cost in full view for everyone to see.
Yeah.
The folks who have actually felt those costs need to have their voices heard again, and regular order does do that. We'll see how much damage this does to the Republicans in 2018. But if they don't spend time getting those voices out again, then they are in very serious trouble next year.
Yeah. And, the timing is such that, again, they're debating this when everything is set for the year. But, things are going to come down the pike when open enrollment hits. And, of course, by then, they're going to be kind of into another legislative calendar, kind of going into the midterms. But, we have a situation where there's several counties throughout the country that do not have a provider or only have, or not provider, an insurer.
They don't have a marketplace provider.
Right, a marketplace provider. hikes are supposed to spike again, and this Cadillac tax is looming as well. So, and that's going to hit the vast majority of people who are have employer-provided health care.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they pass some sort of quickie, like if they attach it to an appropriations bill to defer the Cadillac tax for another year or another fiscal year.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I mean, because that's something you can amend an appropriations bill to carry something like that. It's a great press release, and it would actually be bipartisan popularity.
Yeah, I do think though it is kind of funny, not the risk corridor thing, and I don't think that's actually going to come to pass. That he's going to pull but he could pull the risk corridor funding. But
just ask him. Mooch told him, tweet that, man. You can pull those risk corridors.
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah. If Mooch said it,
but I don't think he will. But whether he will actually, pull the funding and make the Congress go into Obamacare, that could be very bipartisan.
Congress in Obamacare. Here's what he's
they got a carve out, so they're not really in Obamacare.
No. Here's what they got. They are buying from the Small Business Exchange. That was something that was written into it.
Okay,
that also
Congress is a small business.
Each office operates as a unit with a set budget. It's not like there's a budget for all of Congress. Each member of Congress is a small employer with a budget limited by House or Senate rules. Okay, they can't increase their administration's budget in any way. So, in the old days, members of Congress and their staffs were eligible for Federal Employees Health Benefits Program, which had something like a 70-30 employer-employee cost share on the plans. The plans were not extraordinary. I had several of them. I can tell you they're no better or worse than what I had working in private with private employers. Now, when I think it was Grassley said that members of Congress had to go on the exchanges, and that was passed with Obamacare, they did not put into place a cost-sharing mechanism. So the staff of congressional offices who have their salaries capped at a percentage of what the member makes, so that you cannot make more than about $80,000 a year working for a member of Congress, and most people make considerably less than that, we're suddenly going to be paying 100% of their insurance costs. Senior level staff were going to have to leave the Hill because they were going to be bankrupted trying to pay both their extraordinary DC rent and $1,600 a month for insurance for their families. So there was a law written to create a cost-sharing mechanism that basically allowed members of Congress and their staffs to retain the same cost sharing that they would have had under FEHBP. I can't remember what the mechanism is now. It's not that they got a carve out so that they're getting free care somehow. They're basically getting what they used to have, but they buy it off of the DC exchange instead of getting it through the federal health benefits program.
Oh, okay.
Right, but the average American who's buying it on the insurance for that $1,600 a month would probably feel better if Congress and their staffs had to do the exact same thing.
Why? Why should they feel better about that? Why should you want other people to have something that sucks instead of having your situation improved? I hate that. I hate when people say, I don't get a pension, so why should anyone else get a pension? No, the question is, they get a pension, why don't I get one? I hate it when people
because the guy that's paying $1,600, it doesn't make that much, and also has to make his rent, thinks that will light a fire under them to fix this damn thing if they have to do it as well.
In the meantime, there was something that Republicans and Democrats, at least in Congress anyway, very much agreed on, and that was there were tougher sanctions needed against Vladimir Putin's regime. It was finally passed out of Congress, and basically, rather than deal with the embarrassment of having a veto overridden, President Trump will apparently sign the harsher Russia sanctions. I will venture my opinion before I throw it to anybody else. I think this is an example of how the Russia investigation has weakened him, how it has weakened him politically, how he does not feel that he can take a position that he would otherwise take, one that might even be defensible in the eyes of some, of many. And it is, I think, a good movement forward for the country in that we are actually telling Vladimir Putin, no, you can't carve up Ukraine like Thanksgiving dinner, help Bashar Assad kill hundreds of thousands of people, and think that everything is just peachy. So in that respect, it was a good week in Washington, at least from my perspective.
Oh, and interfere with American elections. That was part of it, too.
So I have another take on this. I think that the way it stands right now, I think they're both posturing and trying to look tough. Well, not both, three actually. Congress, Trump, as well as Putin, with now ejecting the embassy staff employees. They're all trying to look tough. When, from what I understand, these sanctions are firm specific. So there's a lot of talk about whether they actually will have the desired effect, because they're not like barring entire industries, such as saying, we're shutting down or making it difficult for Russian banks to do business. We're saying these specific banks that either interfered in the election or have done other bad acts, and that it would just be very easy for them to reform another corporation under a different name and get around these sanctions. So I'm thinking it may be just much ado about nothing, just kind of making political hay, when they really don't have that much of an effect on both sides.
Yeah, but does this mean the president, by signing this, admits in some fashion that the Russians had something to do with election tampering?
You can stop short of that. You can say they attempted to influence the election and that they should be punished for that.
Okay.
I mean,
What is the wording on it?
Probably all he'll cop to is that they tried to carve up Ukraine.
Okay.
Yeah, and you could admit to the desinformatia campaign without, if you're Trump or the Trump campain, you can admit to Russia's desinformatia.
He could say that P-tape is fake news all day long, and that we need to punish him for the P-tape rumors.
The desinformatia is enough without necessarily implicating the Trump campaign per se. So he has some political room there to maneuver.
But he doesn't even admit to the disinformatia campaign. He's still saying it could be China or some guy in New Jersey.
But I'm saying he could.
I know. It's just, come on.
Well. Regardless, Greg, I think the bigger point, more than whether he's then admitting that something went down, he's saying, no, wait, the Russians aren't in my pocket. I'm going after the Russians. I'm signing this bill.
I know. It's just,
and that's how he will. I mean, that's how he's gonna frame it.
And that's how the Mooch is going to frame it.
I know.
Yes.
I just want a shred of truth at some point. Like, oh, okay, we're going to get like a step, like, when you're talking to your child and saying,
well,
did you eat that candy bar? No. Okay. So there was a candy bar eaten at least. Oh no, I don't know. There is chocolate on your face. Oh, okay. I'll admit that.
Kev, in terms of a shred of truth, I am pretty sure that Scaramucci does not actually try to auto-fellate himself orally. So there is truth there.
There's the truth. How many of us think we're soon going to see pictures of Scaramucci on a horse, shirtless, a la Putin?
I
feel like that's coming.
I think it would be Scaramucci with Donald Trump holding behind him, like holding lovingly. But that's another story.
I was about to say, Rebecca, that's not the kind of pictures that I'm as worried about that we might be seeing of Scaramucci.
Yeah. Certain.
Well, his wife did file for divorce this weekend, so he is a free man on the prowl.
Ladies, I'm married, but you girls can take your shot.
Yeah.
Did she have him served via Twitter?
Oh, that would have been
God,
awesome.
I wish she had. That would have been genius.
Speaking
he may have heard about it in the New York Post or something.
Speaking of Twitter, and probably one of the biggest upsets that Trump said this week on Twitter was the trans Americans serving in the military tweet. That was tough to say, which upset a lot of people, obviously, and a lot of Americans, which out of the blue, for no reason, and we know that.
Oh, there was a reason. There was a reason. He did it to preserve funding for his wall. There were problems in the. There were. If I may explain,
walk me through.
Yes,
this.
Certainly. There was a story in Politico on this.
Okay.
There's a story in Politico on this where they are working through the appropriations bills in the House.
Okay.
Including appropriations for Trump's beloved wall.
Okay.
But it's running into trouble because they're lumping all the security.
Idea.
That too. They're lumping all the security stuff into one bill, and that at the time included funding for transgender service members for their medical care, including gender reassignment surgery. And a number of initially Republicans in the House thought they had the votes to strip that out of defense appropriations. The votes were not, in fact, there. About 24 Republican centrists voted to keep the funding there. The Defense Department said, we're not dealing with this issue because we've got a study that we're examining it. We'll get back to you in 3 to 6 months. They went to Donald Trump, and Trump, to solve this issue for the party and to remove a block to funding for his beloved wall, said, you know what, I'll say our policy is no transgender Americans in the military at all. Problem solved. You don't have to worry about the funding issue. You can get the appropriations bills out. This was for his wall. And in fact, if that wall ever gets built, one of the bricks should be this golden plaque that says, this is for all the LGBTQ plus rights that were sacrificed unwillingly so that this wall would be built, assuming the wall ever gets built. So the interesting thing for me is, and I'll stop talking, the interesting thing is, though, if you look at the reaction, this is supposed to be a wedge issue that divides Democrats, and it was a wedge issue, but the thin end of it went right through the Republican Party. Because you saw Republican senators, everyone from, say, a Susan Collins to a Joni Ertz and even an Orrin Hatch saying this was bad policy. Trump actually divided his own party by mistake in an attempt to come up with a cultural issue he thought would help his base. He alienated large chunks of his voters and made himself look like an idiot, all for his beloved wall.
Yeah, so I spoke today to a former Air Force, 20-year Air Force vet, who I have a lot of respect for, 2-time Bronze Star winner, 2 tours in Iraq. He's actually my twin brother. I'm going to just throw that out there, kind of proud. And I have to admit, I disagree on a lot with this guy. But there's a lot of things that I do agree with, and I respect his opinion. So I asked him about this, and he told me that the day it happened, he still works for the military. There was a memo that was circulated that said, until further notice, changes in military does not come from tweets. So you will be, and this was fascinating. They came from, it says changes in military service does not. Now here's the second part that was really interesting. It said, we have something that is on board. You will be respectful to those people in uniform around you, period. And that was not joking. The other thing that was interesting was he has to go to all these seminars and whatnot, like for everything. And but he had to go to a trans serviceman seminar, and he said it was really interesting. To be in the military, you can't just one day say, hey, I think I'm a woman, or I think I'm a man. It's not like that. It's not like these fears that people have, like, oh, I think I want surgery. There's a whole process, and just like everything in the military, there's professionals, and there's paperwork, and there's a rigmarole. And my brother,
there's that whole Hopkins protocol where you have to be living as your affirmed gender for a year, and there's
you have to see people, you have to see professionals, and then there's you still have to pass tests, one gender, and there's an assigned date. Well, let's say he gave me a ridiculous acronym he kept using, which he does that all the time.
Oh my God. The military always has the best acronyms.
Yeah, he was like Deers or Deems, I can't remember. And he's like, this is what the military sees you as. And, boom. And that's it. And on this day, it will change. And period. And it was
that would have been Deers. I think Deers is the personnel program.
And it was fascinating. And I finally, after he was telling me all this, I said, what is your general feel? And he was like, we just don't care. It's not an issue. We treat people like their job that they do. Which, awesome. He's like, we've got other things to worry about. We got budget cuts. We got things going on. For us to worry about this, that's not going to happen. So,
your average member of the armed services is more worried about making sure their comrades can cross the Rubicon than whether or not they're crossing the gender spectrum.
Right. So once again, thank you from my brother, who just happens to be in town doing a seminar, and I'm really lucky that I got to see him this week. So shout outs to him, and for taking some time to explain his view and some interesting things about the military, which I did not know or would not know, obviously, because I'm a dirty liberal. So I hope he listens. So that's all I can say.
No, it's interesting that there are new protocols in place, and we can guess at what the costs are. It doesn't seem to be a morale issue among personnel, and so, but like Trump is again, he's willing to punch down.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's willing to punch down to get what he wants, and I just don't like that.
No, I don't. Wow, Trump's a bully. Who knew?
My God, Greg! I think you're onto something.
Stop the presses. So, all right. Last, I guess we should be wrapping this up. But before we do, did anyone see the? I'm going to use my air quotes. The debate between Tommy Lauren and Chelsea Handler.
I did not see it. No.
Okay. Well, did you
see? No. I heard tweets about it. I read it on Twitter because I'm like the president in that. Reince.
I did not see it, but from what I hear, once again, the sweet meteor of death disappointed me by skipping the event. I have a sad.
The way I look at it is these are two people that neither side wants to wants representation from. For some reason, once again, we see representing both sides, and we all scream, "Why?" I don't want Chelsea Handler representing the left.
And I don't want Tommy Lahren representing the right.
And yet here we go.
Tommy Lahren is out there, and none of us want Tommy Lahren representing Obamacare, but she is actually a beneficiary of one of the most popular provisions of the bill, which is that children can stay on their parents' insurance until they're 26 years old.
Yeah,
and she, who is only 24, which is why she has such amazing in-depth insights about everything due to her vast life experience of less than a quarter century. She can stay on her mom and dad's insurance.
Look, the simple fact of the matter.
She doesn't have a real job. Alert Ben Sass.
She doesn't anymore.
She is not an adult.
No.
The simple fact of the matter is, for ever since Jon Stewart got on Comedy Central, the left has convinced itself that what they really need is somebody who can make foul-mouthed jokes to represent them. And ever since Ann Coulter's debut in the late 1990s, the right seems to believe that what they really need is a vapid blonde quote bombshell unquote to represent them. And so what we end up with, this is the denouement: Chelsea Handler and Tommy Lahren sharing a stage together, basically shouting out their various marketing strategies to everybody. And once again, I await the sweet meteor of death making its appearance, and it.
Yeah, I mean, we might be changing that. This all might be changing because now the left has Samantha Bee, who's a blonde. She's not vapid, but she is a blonde, and the right has Scaramucci, who is foul-mouthed. There you go. We've flipped the script in the Trump era.
You're turning it all upside down. You're turning it on its head.
Indeed.
Excellent. Well, on that note, thank you for listening, and please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Facebook at facebook.com/More Perfect Union Podcast, and share our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends and family and people who you usually just annoy with pictures of puppies and your kids can discover us as well. And if you'd like to join us for political debates between shows, join us in our Facebook group, Open Fire Politics. We're all there, and we'd love to see you there too. Any final thoughts, gang?
In Open Fire right now, I posted a wonderful meme about stating your unpopular opinions. We've run the gamut from music to sports to politics in there. So good times at Open Fire.
Excellent.